further ado, our first slide would be great surgeons are not born. No? Walang pinanganak na magaling na agad na surgeon. They are made by sacrifice and perseverance. So, a part of that sacrifice now is spending our Sunday today or doing this review and lecture for our residents. I think this is a national, no? So this is not just Metro Manila. We have around 170 participants. So thank you very much for attending and registering for our reviews. Hopefully pumasok kayong lahat sa ating diplomate exam. RIT and CERES muna pala, and then diplomate exam. So technically, for the 11th edition ng Sir Schwartz natin, we have 54 chapters. Iba-iba din, no? Yung we have 52 weeks in a year. Iba-iba, no? May mga ibang residente bago mag-residency tapos na nila yung Schwartz. Yung iba natatapos ng residency, hindi natatapos yung Schwartz. So this is just a guide, no? If ever you can read one chapter a week. So that would cover 52 chapters. Yung dalawa pag combine nyo sa the remaining two pag combine nyo sa isang linggo. So after your first year or second year, kung hindi nyo pa natapos, after a year, natapos nyo yung Schwartz, no? Sa mga nakarinig na nung lecture ko last year, ganito rin siya, no? You have 15 chapters of basic, 49 chapters for our specifics. Wala talaga tayong choice. No, you have to make time to read. Hindi pwedeng sabihin walang time. Wala talaga tayong time. Lahat. Gagawan mo ng time para magbasa in order to become a diplomate, no? So again, this is a review for the fluids and electrolytes. So hopefully yung 17 pages ng chapter we can cover it mostly, but you have to read pa rin, no? You have to read it and take down notes. Hopefully, kung nakapag-take down notes kayo last year sa mga seniors na dito, review na lang to. Sa mga first year, kung hindi nyo pa nababasa, fluids and electrolytes, basic, kasama siya sa basic chapter. So, you really, really have to read it. It is part and parcel of the surgical management of our patients. Okay, so for our outline, we'll be talking about the total body water, fluids, and electrolytes. Of course, other than that, we will also be discussing your acid-base balance. And lastly, will be your colloids and fluid management. So for the fluids, or our total body water, no, screenshot itong page na to. For the males, you have 60%, and females will have less total body water, 50%. Why? Because the lean tissues such as your muscle, your solid organs have higher water content compared to your fattening bone. So genetically, no, mostly males, they have higher total body water compared to your females. And then yung dalawa on each side, your young and your old patients. Young patients have higher, no, they have the highest actually, no, they have the highest percentage of total body water, which is found in newborns. Around 80% is comprised of water. After 1 year of age, it decreases to 65%, and then gradually, ayan, naglalaro siya to 60% if males. For females, it's 50%. While our elderly patients, they comprise of around 50% total body water. Okay? Later, sasabihin ko yung mga possible trick questions or yung ideals na mga ginagawa ng tanong dito. So for the next fluid compartments, so we have from your 60%, no, nakita dun sa baba, of total body water, it will further break down to your intracellular and extracellular, or TIE. Your intracellular will comprise or 40%, while your extracellular, your plasma and interstitial fluid, 20%, breakdown 5% and 15%. So if you have a male with a 70 kilogram weight, 60% of that is 42,000 ml or 42 liters. 42 liters, two-thirds of that or 40% is your intracellular volume. Okay? 5% is your plasma, 3.5 liters, and interstitial fluid, 10.5 liters. So that will give you a total of 42 liters. Ngayon, yung trick question would be, they will give you a patient that is female. No? Female, you should always remember 50% ng total body water. So what is the total body water of a patient, a female patient with 60 kilogram body weight? 60 times 0.5, that's 30 liters. Then breakdown mo na agad yun. Two-thirds of that is intracellular, and the extracellular component of one-third is your extracellular component. Further breakdown, 5% and 15%, 10 liters. So 2.5 liters is your plasma, and 7.5 liters is your interstitial fluid. Malinaw. If you have any questions, you can type it down sa Q&A natin. We'll try to address them after. Okay, sample question from previous series in RIT. How much is the plasma component of ECF in a 65 kilogram female patient? So plasma component, remember, balik tayo dun sa slide. Okay. 50% is your total body water, right? So that's 32.5 liters. So the 32.5 liters, we further break down into two-thirds and one-third. One-third would be your extracellular component, and then further breakdown with your plasma, which is 5% and 15%, or one-third, one-fourth, and three-fourths. Okay? That's how you compute it. Minsan, kakamadali, nandun yung choice ng 60%, yun agad ang sinagot. And then, yun yung ginamit na formula. So, you better be careful. Read carefully the question. Okay? So, hindi kayo magkamali. Nagmamadali. True or false? A patient with a BMI of 42 has more total body water compared to a patient with BMI of 24. Tama ba yun? Diba, as mentioned, lean muscle and solid organs have more water content compared to your fat and bone. So, ang sagot dito would be false. Okay? We now go to the fluid compartments. Fluid compartments are balanced between your cations and your anions. So, ganun ulit. Intracellular on your right side, and your extracellular or your plasma and interstitial fluid on your left. So, on the plasma, ang pinaka common na cation would be your sodium. And your most common anions would be your chloride and your bicarbonates. While in your interstitial fluid, protein, yun yung always na tinatanong dito, protein and component, where is it more common? Is it more common in plasma compared to your interstitial fluid? So this slide shows you the protein is most commonly is higher in the plasma component. While for your intracellular fluid, most common cation are your potassium and magnesium, while your most common anions are your phosphates and as well as your proteins. Mas mataas ang protein ng intracellular fluid compared to your plasma. But between plasma and interstitial fluid, ang plasma ang mas mataas na protein. Okay? With the fluid compartments, water is distributed evenly throughout all fluid compartments. So sodium is confined to your ECF. So, para matandaan ng mabilis, it's na out. sodium is always out, associated with water because of its osmotic and electrical properties. So when you give sodium-containing fluids, it increases your volume of ECF and expands your interstitial space 3 times more than your plasma. Your osmotic pressure is measures the in osmoles or milliosmoles the number of osmotically active particles. Ito medyo trick question to, no? Minsan binibigay yung glucose. What should be the tawag dito? What should be the value of your glucose? Dapat hindi siya na naka micromoles. Dapat it should be in milligrams per deciliter, no? Kung hindi, you have to convert it first. Ganun yung mga step questions. Also, your BUN, not in your micromoles, no, per liter, or usually it should be in milligrams per deciliter. So your computation, 2 sodium, glucose plus your 2 glucose divided by 18 plus your BUN divided by 2.8. So per Schwartz, our normal value is 290 to 310. Sample question. What is the predominant cation in the ICF? Hindi tayo active ngayon na ano. What's your predominant cation in the ICF? Sa in. Oh, it's your potassium. Positive cation. So pag negative, extracellular, it's your cation in your extracellular, that's your sodium. So true or false, a patient with sodium of 125 micromoles per liter, 256 milligram per deciliter of blood sugar, and a BUN of 5 milligrams per deciliter is considered dehydrated. So you have to compute your osmolality. In terms of time, lalagpasan na natin yan. Okay, for your fluids, take note of this also. A healthy person consumes around 2 liters of water per day. So that water gain, it can be sensible or insensible. So that oral fluids, just you have to read, this table and be memorize which is your water loss or your sensible. So your urine will be around 800 ml to 1.5. Intestinal sensible water loss is around 0 to 250 ml. For your sweat, minimum niya 0, maximum of 4 liters per hour. While your insensible water loss, it can be from your lungs and skin, an average of 600 ml per day to a maximum of 1,500 ml per day. So sweat here, it's a hypotonic, and usually sweating results in only a small sodium loss. It is GI losses, which are most commonly seen in surgical patients. So they should be replaced accordingly. So for this slide, composition of GI secretions. So usually tinatanong yan, how? They will give you the component of the sodium, potassium, chloride, and bicarbonate. And then, yung choices mo, saan galing yun? No? So, kailangan pa bang i-memorize yan? Yes, you have to memorize this, no? When you review for the exam days before, no? Now, you have to be familiar, no? Kasi you have to also study the table. Ano yung mainly na difference nila? So, sa stomach, okay, yung kanyang sodium, it's 60 to 90. But the chloride is around 100 to 130. And 0 bicarbonate. Yun yung minememorize talaga. And then tatanong ng examiner, what is where does the fluid came from? Kasi you have to study nga, di ba? Yung GI secretions. May mga tanong na ganyan talaga. So bicarbonate is around 115. Clincher na yun, no? That could be coming from your pancreas. it has the highest content of pure bicarbonate. So really, you have to study this table. Okay, disorders of your fluid balance. So it can be in three component: volume, concentration, and composition. Volume, it can either be normal or hypovolemia and hypervolemia. Concentrations, same, no? Hyponatremia, normal, hypernatremia. Same goes with your potassium, magnesium, calcium, and the rest. Composition can be by acid-base balance, imbalance, changes in calcium levels, magnesium, potassium. Okay? Disturbances in fluid balance. So they can either be your volume deficits or your volume excess. So pag sinabi mong volume deficits, it can either be GI fluid loss or sequestration. It can either be a soft tissue injury. Ito yung mga nagto-third spacing, patients with burns or intra-abdominal processes. You have volume excess, it can either be iatrogenic or secondary to renal dysfunction, congestive heart failure, and cirrhosis. So for your ECF volume deficit, most common disorder in surgical patients, no? If you have ECF, volume deficit, that is the most common fluid disorder for our patients. So it can either be acute or chronic. Pag acute, you have your cardiovascular and CNS signs. Pag chronic na siya, you have tissue signs. So if there are no tissue signs, that is just acute deficit. While your ECF volume excess, it can either be plasma and interstitial fluid are increased, and it has cardiopulmonary and pulmonary signs. The table on the right, that's your signs and symptoms. I'll not go to them one by one already. So this is just a diagram of the regulation of plasma volume by your antidiuretic hormone. So if the patient is thirsty, I'm thirsty, you have an decreased plasma volume, no? Your plasma osmolality increases. Hence, your osmotic pressure is also increased. The osmoreceptors in our hypothalamus detected that the increase in osmotic pressure. So ADH is released, causing water reabsorptions in our kidney, causing decrease in your urine, and increase in your plasma volume. So that's the pattern. Okay? For the concentration changes, so we go to hyponatremia muna. Hyponatremia. So can either be, as mentioned, no, high, normal, or low. So for your high volume with hyponatremia, you have either increased intake, post-operative ADH secretions, or your medications. If you have normal bulimia with hyponatremia, it can either be hyperglycemia, increased plasma lipids or proteins. SIDH, nandito siya sa normo with hyponatremia. Water intoxication and diuretics. These diuretics can also be either normal or low. No? So the low diuretics, as you can see also in the slide, and renal losses, GI losses, decreased sodium intake, and primary renal diseases. So for every 100 milligram deciliter increment in plasma glucose above normal, the plasma sodium decreases by 1.6 milliequivalents per liter. So there will be cases, question, that they will also give you the blood sugar of the patient and plasma glucose. So you will adjust the sodium level accordingly. So the different signs and symptoms again on your right. For the evaluation, so you have to do a systemic review, exclude hyperosmolar causes like your hyperglycemia or giving of mannitol and pseudohyponatremia. So you should be able to determine if it's depletional versus dilutional or hypervolemia. So depletional or caused by your dehydration is extrarenal if the urine sodium is less than 20. If the urine sodium is more than 20 mg per liter, that's renal. And then dilutional, you have a high effective circulating volume. And then, as mentioned, if you have normal volume status, you evaluate for SIDH. Hyponatremia, how will you treat it? With water restrictions, and of course, administration of sodium for severe cases. Symptoms does not occur in serum sodium less than greater than 100 mg uh, per liter. So if you have symptomatic patients, you give 3% NSS to increase the sodium by no more than 1 mg per liter per hour. This one, lagi din tinatanaw. Until it reaches 130. For your asymptomatic patients, you should increase sodium level by no more than 0.5. So for your symptomatic, it's 1, and your asymptomatic, it's 0.5 mg per liter. So a maximum of 12 per day. So dito rin, lagi yung tinatanong din yan, what is the consequence of rapid corrections of your hyponatremia? You have your CPM, or your central pontine myelinosis. It is described as seizure, weakness, or paresis, akinetic movements, and unresponsiveness. Minsan, hindi niya sasabihin na CPM yung patient. It will give you these signs and symptoms. And what is that cause? So rapid correction of hyponatremia. It may lead to permanent brain damage and even death. So we go now to your hypernatremia. So again, you check your volume status. You're either high, normal, or low. So for your high, it can either be iatrogenic sodium administration, mineralocorticoid excess, aldosteronism, Cushing's, or congenital adrenal hyperplasia. On the other spectrum, if you have loss of free water, it can either be non-renal water loss, skin and GI losses, renal water losses, osmotic diuretics, diabetes insipidus, and adrenal failure. While the diabetes insipidus can also be seen in your normal bulimia. So you have to differentiate the volume status. How? You request for your urinary sodium component and measures for your urinary osmolality. Okay? Signs and symptoms again are on your right.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Darwin, nawala audio. Nawala audio mo.
Hello?
Ay, Darwin, nag-pause yung kanina. Tapos nawala sounds for a while.
Sorry. Okay. Okay. Yan. Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can see your slide.
Saan tayo tumigil kanina naghang?
Okay, correction. Tapos a few slides prior to that, nawalan ng sound. So maybe go back mga 5 or 6 slides.
Like, okay, correction. This one?
Yeah, dyan siya nag-pause. Pero prior to that, mga 2 or 3 slides nawala na yung sounds.
Okay, so...
Siguro sa potassium. Potassium yan naman yan. Yan, dito sa... Okay.
Okay. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Dr.
Yan.
Baby.
Okay yan, sir.
Yan, salamat, sir. So going back, sorry for the technical difficulty. So we have potassium, again, no, the normal level is 3.5 to 5 mg per liter. It is maintained by your renal excretions. 2% is found in your ECF. It is important for your cardiac and neuromuscular function. Signs and symptoms of increased and decreased potassium levels are on your right. The etiology of potassium abnormalities are as follows. If you have hyperkalemia, it can either be increased intake, increased release, or impaired excretions. While for your hypokalemia, you can either have inadequate intake, excessive potassium excretions, or GI losses, which is the most common. So how do you correct? It depends on your goals. If you want to reduce the total body potassium, cation exchange resin is your drug by giving oxalate. If you shift the potassium from extracellular to intracellular, that's how glucose and bicarbonate works. Also insulin and albuterol. If you by protecting the cells from the effects of potassium, you give calcium chloride and calcium carbonate. Of course, you should stop all exogenous source of potassium, and ultimately, if all conservative measures fail, you give hemodialysis. For the treatment of your symptomatic hyperkalemia are as follows, depending on your mechanism of actions and your goals. For hypo, you give potassium repletion. So rate of repletion, this is determined by your symptoms. So if you have mild and asymptomatic patients, can you give Kalium-Durul per RM? If you have symptomatic or able to tolerate oral intake, you give by IV. So unmonitored settings at around 10 to 20 mg per hour. Or for monitored, you monitor by ECG. Caution should be exercised when there is renal impairment. Okay, we now go to calcium. Calcium is around 1% of calcium is in the ECF. Normal level, according to Schwartz, it's 8.5 to 10.5 mg per liter. 40% is protein bound. We have 10% complex and 50% is ionized. So that's around 4.2 to 4.8 milligrams per deciliter. Your total body calcium balance is under complex hormonal control. For the different scenarios for your hypercalcemia and hypocalcemia, they are as follows. How do you correct your hypercalcemia? You treat when symptomatic, or if it's more than 12 milligrams per deciliter. In initial management, you correct the volume deficit and induce brisk dialysis. For your hypocalcemia, you can either give IV or per RM. So IV through your 10% calcium gluconate, 2 grams per IV over 1 hour, or your calcium carbonate suspension. You give in order to achieve a serum level of 7 to 9 milligrams per deciliter. This one, usually tinatanong din, hypocalcemia that is refractory to your correction. What will you look for? You look for hypomagnesia and hypokalemia. They should be corrected as well. For your phosphorus, it's a primary intracellular anion found in metabolically active cells and is primarily renally excreted. So, gaya ng mga ibang electrolytes natin, you have hypophosphatemia, which is present if you have decreased urinary excretions, if you have increased intake, and endogenous mobilization of phosphorus by your cell destruction. So, for this one, usually magbibigay ng case scenario. So the patient had hypoparathyroidism with hyperparathyroidism. What is the most common? Electrolyte imbalancing on this patient. Tinatanong siya. So it can also be found in patients with metastatic depositions of your soft tissue calcium phosphorus complexes. Mataas ang potassium of patients with cancers. For your hypophosphatemia, it can either have decreased intake if you have patients with malabsorption, administration of phosphate binders, decreased dietary intake. If you have intracellular shift of your phosphorus in patients with respiratory alkalosis, insulin therapy, pre-feeding syndrome, hungry bone syndrome, no? So you have hypophosphatemia, an increase in excretion. So asymptomatic until levels fall significantly, so hindi siya masyado talaga nag-manifest. And sometimes, yung pinaka-common na presentation would have cardiac dysfunction or muscle weakness. So how do you correct? So hyperphosphatemia, you give phosphate binders by giving sucralfate. You also can give calcium acetate tablets when hypocalcemia is also present, and ultimately dialysis. For your hypophosphatemia, management depends on the level of depletion and tolerance to oral supplementation. Next, we have magnesium. It is the fourth most common mineral in the body, half of which is in the bone. 1/3 in ECF is bound to albumin. So the different case scenarios for hypermagnesemia are as follows, and the different signs and symptoms in your right. How do you correct? So you withhold the exogenous source of magnesium, of course. You correct the volume deficit, correct acidosis if present, and you give calcium chloride and dialysis. These are the different scenarios naman for your hypomagnesemia. So you have decreased intake, increased renal excretions, pathologic losses, and the manifestations on your right. As again, no, magbibigay ng case scenario, and then you will, yung mga choices nandoon. Ano yung pinaka-common na electrolyte imbalance on this patient? How do you correct hypomagnesemia? Oral if the patient is mild and asymptomatic, and IV if symptomatic. Severe deficits are found in patients with less than 1 mg per liter. How do you correct it? You give 1 to 2 grams of magnesium sulfate IV over 15 minutes or over 2 minutes if with torsades de Puentes. And also you give, as mentioned kanina, calcium gluconate. Correct the hypocalcemia. Next, we now go to the acid-base balance. So acid-base balance, that's a common, that's the normal pH levels of 7.35 to 7.45. Your important buffers are as follows: intracellular, your proteins and your phosphates, while for your extracellular, your bicarbonates and your carbonic acid system. You have either respiratory compensation or metabolic compensation. Respiratory compensation is mediated by your hydrogen-sensitive chemoreceptors found in your carotid and brainstem. So for your metabolic acidosis, you have increased ventilation. Metabolic alkalosis, the opposite, decrease. Compensatory response is immediate. While for your metabolic compensation, it is primarily mediated by your kidneys. Respiratory acidosis, you have increased bicarbonate reabsorption. While for your respiratory alkalosis, you have decreased bicarbonate reabsorption. So your compensatory response for your metabolic compensation is delayed naman. So for metabolic acidosis, it can either be found in patients with increased intake of acids, increasing generation of acids, and loss of carbonates. How do you compensate? You produce buffers, increased ventilation, increased renal absorption and regeneration of bicarbonate, and increased secretions of hydrogen ions. So this one, anion gap. Usually, tinatanong din to. Need to be measured in evaluating patients with metabolic acidosis and low serum bicarbonate levels. So you have an index of unmeasured ions, your anion gap, sodium minus your chloride and bicarbonate. So the normal anion gap is 8 to 12 millimoles per liter. For your bicarbonate, it's controversial. It can lead to metabolic alkalosis, intracellular acidosis, and respiratory acidosis. For metabolic acidosis with normal anion gap, these are the different age scenarios. So bicarbonate loss is accompanied by a gain of chloride, thus your Ag or your anion gap is unchanged. Normal lang ang anion gap mo. Yes, you have to memorize these cases. Metabolic alkalosis. It develops in patients when there is increase in both bicarbonate generation and impaired renal function. So you can have your hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis. You have concomitant hypokalemia with intracellular hydrogen ions to buffer excess bicarbonate. The resulting hypokalemia causes excretions of hydrogen ions in the face of alkalosis. So how do you treat this? Replacement of volume deficit with isotonic saline and potassium once adequate urine output is ensured. Respiratory acidosis, there is retention of your carbon dioxide secondary to your decreased alveolar ventilation. So as mentioned, there is delayed compensation. And treatment of acute respiratory acidosis is directed, of course, to the underlying cause. Respiratory alkalosis, most are acute in nature and secondary to alveolar hyperventilation. The following are the etiologies. So there is hypocapnia, which causes uptake of your potassium and your phosphates, increasing the binding of calcium to albumin. Signs and symptoms are as follows. You treat it by, of course, treatment of the underlying cause, and may also require direct treatment of the hyperventilation of the patient. Next, we go to the different parenteral solutions. So this one, how do they ask this table or this table? They will give you again the component, the electrolyte component of that fluid. And then you will determine what's the type of fluid, and they will also ask what is the sodium component of lactated ringers. Mga questions na ganon. And syempre hindi nila tatanong kung ano yung sodium component ng NSS. Alam niyo na yon. What is the chloride component of your plasmalite? Is there bicarbonate in your plasmalite? How many? Your milliosmoles or osmolality of this fluid. That's how they ask for this table. So you should be familiarized with this table. Your alternative resuscitative fluids are as follows. So a number of alternative solutions for volume expansion and resuscitations are available. Hypertonic saline solutions, your 3.5 and 5%, are used for correction of severe sodium deficits, while hypertonic solutions with 7.5% have been used for treatment of patients with closed head injuries and to increase the cerebral perfusion and decrease your intracranial pressure, thus decreasing your brain edema. You should be able to determine kung ano yung molecular weight, osmolality, and sodium components of this alternative resuscitative fluids. So your colloids, they are confined in your intravascular space because of their higher molecular weight. Therefore, they are more efficient for us plasma volume expander. It can cause or worsen edema and impaired tissue oxygenation under conditions of severe hemorrhagic shock. So you have four major types: your albumin, dextran, etastarts, and gelatins. We now go to your fluid management. So preoperatively, how do you give your maintenance fluid? Lagi na ang tinatanong to sa ward when your rounds. So if the patient is around this kilogram, how do you give your maintenance? So your first 10 kilograms, 100. Second 10 kilograms, 50 ml per kilogram. And more than 20 kilograms, it's 20. So 100, 50, 20. So if you have a patient with 85 kilogram, so the first 10 times 100. Second 10 times 50. Yung remaining 65 times 20. That would give you a total of 2.8 liters. in 24 hours. That's your maintenance fluid. Preoperative fluid therapy, acute deficits, they can be presented with cardiovascular signs accompanied by oliguria and hemoconcentration. So you correct the volume deficit before the surgery and resuscitate with isotonic crystalloids. If you have patients with cardiovascular signs, you can give bolus of 1 to 2 liters followed by continuous infusion. Your adequacy of resuscitation is measured by reversal of signs of volume deficit and, of course, monitoring your urine output. Accompanying electrolyte abnormalities should be corrected first prior to surgical intervention, unless, of course, stopped. Intraoperatively, how do you correct? Upon induction of anesthesia, yung pag-induct pa lang, nag-hypotension na yung patient because of volume deficit. Hindi na-correct na maayos. So avoid volume deficit. It can be corrected preoperatively. Of course, it should be corrected, replace ongoing losses, and provide adequate maintenance. Intraoperative volume loss can either be your blood loss or your third space loss in open abdominal surgeries. After the surgery, fluid therapy should be corrected, and the following should be considered: your current volume status, projected ongoing losses, preoperative losses, intraop, and your third space losses. Adequacy of resuscitation should be guided. As mentioned, restoration of your vital signs, urine output monitoring, base deficit or lactate dehydrogenase determination. A CBP line may be inserted to guide your fluid therapy. So, in summary, we're able to present the different fluids and electrolytes imbalances in our patients, surgical patients, different case scenarios for acid-base balance as well, and discuss the different IB fluids and in your pre-op, intra-op, and post-op patients. I think that's the last stage. Dr. Billy, Dr. Ron.